We have a fantastic lineup of speakers who are going to be sharing with us their work, their insights, in literally 15 minutes each. Now we have a challenge that we have lined up for you in the audience, and that is to see who wants to have the role of timekeeper. Fastest hand up gets a prize. Let's see. Here we go. Where's our prize? Thank you for nominating yourself. You can stand up for recognition. Moment in the sun. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And thank you. Let's get your name.
Chikondi Kasambara from Malawi.
Thank you. Beautiful name that I didn't want to butcher. Oh, and smile for the camera. Thank you. So once again, thank you all for joining this session. Please do engage with the audience. Rather, you engage with the audience, and the audience, we encourage you to engage with the speakers. We might just have a mini surprise for those who engage with our lineup of speakers, because this is often one of the hardest sessions to do. Within 15 minutes to showcase the best of your work, it's almost like a competition. So thank you all, and thank you to the audience.
You can start as you wish.
Okay, 15.
Yeah, you start.
15.
Okay, this is working, yes? Okay. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Tajuddeen Gwadabe, and I'm from Masakani Research Foundation. Specifically, I work with the Masakani African Languages Hub. So a lot of the conversations that have happened earlier looked at language inclusion, and that is exactly what we have been working on for the last 5 years. So Masakani is a Zulu word meaning build together, and at Masakani we have been working with grassroots organizations and communities to build language data sets for the various African languages. We do have data sets and models in a lot of the African languages, and those can be used to build apps that people have been talking about. How do we include our local languages? So we have those communities, and we have those people that can build those data sets, and we have been doing that for the last 5 years. Of recent, we have the Masakani African Languages Hub, which is an initiative to work with communities to build more of these data sets, more of these African-based models, more of the performance of the African models. So a lot of the LLMs that have been mentioned is a question of how good do they perform when it comes to African languages. Maybe when you look at them, you will see that in some of the African languages, they actually do have some performances, but then the question is when you take them to a domain-specific use case, say healthcare, say education, say agriculture, how do they perform? What would be the contextual information missing as some of the conversations that have happened in this room? So that is what we are working on. How can we build AI, language AI, specifically for the African continent, built by Africans and for Africans to now get to a place where we have these models in our languages, where we have these data sets in our languages that can be useful for our communities to now build on. Why are we here? Specifically, we are from the tech side of things, and we would want to have collaborations with people that see the human side of what we are building. So we just don't want to build data sets, we just don't want to build models from a tech perspective, but also we want to match that with the human factor so that we build models and data sets that can be actually useful. And that is why we are here, that is why we are presenting ourselves. We want to have collaborators, we want to have people that understand the other side of how humans work, what are the challenges that humans face with the current models, so that that can now be incorporated into what we're doing to build more resilient, more useful data set for our communities. On the Masakani African languages side again, so we are a grant-making arm of the Masakani Research Foundation, which means that we do have funding from a couple of funders that we are able to now give to different community members to build specific data sets for their languages, specific models for their languages. If you go to the Masakane website, you'll see a call for proposal, which are still open. Unfortunately, they are about to close in a week, but then if you are interested, please get in touch and you can apply for them. Also on the website, you will see our contact if you would want to connect with us and we can have this conversation continue. Thank you.
Sorry, the current speaker has about 9 minutes on his allocation. I think you can have some questions. You can ask about that call for proposals, anything.
You can just use the speaker on your table, the microphone, sorry.
All right, there we go. Big fan of Masakane, love your guys' work with the University of Pretoria. I think you guys do brilliant work there. A lot of people, when you talk about large language models, they're not sure what they could possibly build. So I'd like you to talk a little bit more about what could that look like if people do want to make applications for some of the grant funding. What could that look like? What kind of assistance you guys would also provide outside of just the funding itself? Are there structures that people that they could talk to, and how could you guys help beyond just the funding as well? Because I think you guys do amazing work, and I think there's possibly a lot of people who would want to work with you guys, but it just gets so technical from the kind of quite technical perspective that you guys work on.
Okay, so I think that is one of the reasons why we're here, to actually not only think of it from the technical side, but also how to build with civil societies. Now, for the calls, specifically what we would want to do is have like a cohort-based approach where when you get the funding, we still support you through the process, and it's not going to be just the funding part. However, when you speak about the LLM part and what can be built on that, so it now depends on your application really, what you are building for. Maybe LLMs are not the best per se. There are the smaller language models that could be more suitable for your application. It could mean that Gen AI is not really the best for you. It might be something else. So thinking about all those questions on what's really the technology that works in your specific case would also be something that I think we can support with. And when it comes to like collaborations with civil societies, that's something also that we're looking at, so that we don't necessarily only have to look at LLMs. There are a lot of other possibilities that can help, and they are still within the boundaries of AI.
Yes, you can use the microphone on your table.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Caroline Chwinga from Zambia. I've heard a lot about pockets and pockets of what is being developed here and there, but I'm not hearing any coordinated way of doing it. And my proposal right now is, I'm from Gender Division, and we anchor the AU Champion on Ending Child Marriage. And I know that there are other champions that have to do with especially GBV. So why don't we think of maybe approaching these champions and be able to come up with some app that can be scaled up on those common factors? And I think it's just a pity that maybe that grant proposal will be closing soon, and I don't know whether we'll manage to tap into it, because we're also thinking of having a community of practice, writing on the community of practice that is already, was already established by the AU, Harmful Practices Unit, but to do something that would demonstrate from Zambia point of view. So this kind of thing would have been a nice thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So part of the reason for the Masakane African Languages Hub coming out of the Masakane Research Foundation is actually to help in coordinating some of this siloed work that had been done. So even if when you look at it purely from the technical perspective, you see a lot of different builders, whether on the model side or the data side, that have been working on the African continent. If you now ask the question, say Swahili, what are the available data sets for Swahili that I can use to build on? I think it's a big question that hardly anyone can answer. Now, what we're trying to do as part of the call for proposal is exactly, can we map where these languages are and what can be used, what they can be used for as they are, and what are then the missing pieces, then that people can now go and continue to build on those. So definitely we are very much interested in collaborations, in coordinating and partnering, and as well building with the community. The second part of the thing is that, so we are relatively new. We just started 3 months ago. So this call for proposal that we are having out there is just the first one. We are going to have several others coming after this. So there are still opportunities beyond just this first round. And we had some initial conversations with AU NEPAD on how to coordinate some of these activities with other actors. So it's something in the working, and we're hoping to connect with more people so that we get to that point where we have more community engagement and more community-centered development. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Do we have any questions from my people here? We have been quite silent. Okay, I think we can reset our timer and have the next speaker.
A very good morning to you all. A very good morning to you all. My name is Mutegeki Agaba, and I am from the Africa Regional At-Large Organization, which is an at-large organization within ICANN. And what an honor to be speaking after you, Eline, because I'll be talking about how we can decolonize the internet and have an internet that is for everyone. Now, you could forget everything I'm going to say today, but don't forget these 3 things. One is language, the second is script, and the other one is length. Now, language is what we use to communicate between one another. And then script is that which is written on the internet, and the scripts translate our language onto the internet. And then length, the internet has evolved to accommodate more longer domain names. And when I say domain names, it's basically your address on the internet. So what we have now is that, unlike back in the days where we used to have short 3-letter domain names like .com, .org, right now we have domain names that are flexible enough to allow us to be ourselves. Domain names like .photography, .asia, but even more so domain names that are in different languages. Now, this is where the problem is. If you, for example, try to log onto a website and sign up for an email address, or try to do shopping, maybe on Amazon, and case in point, if Amazon has not updated their systems and their website or even their applications to be able to accommodate your domain name, your email address, which is internationalized, you will not be able to do shopping, meaning at some point you'll be left out. So now, look at this analogy. Imagine if all road signs in Kampala, I'm using Kampala because I'm from Uganda. Imagine if all the road signs in Kampala were in Chinese. Wouldn't you get lost? Would. Yes, you would. So now, what is the solution? The solution is universal acceptance. And what exactly is universal acceptance? And this is the concept that all domain names should be treated equally. Yeah? whether you have a .com or whether you have a .photography, whether you have a domain name that's in Arabic. Now, at this point, allow me to invite Toko, my co-presenter, to take us through the next part of this talk.
Okay, so hello everybody, I'm Toko Mia. So universal acceptance is a very simple principle, and I hope that we all remember the word so we can advocate for it. It basically just outlines that the internet should function in exactly the same way, irrespective of what text it is written in. So currently, our internet is written in the Latin script text. That is just a matter of coincidence. There's no real reason why that is happening. It's just because of the people that built the internet, specifically using the script. So we have spoken. There's an organization called the International Corporation of Assigned Names and Numbers who is championing and advocating for a redirection of this script. So having other website scripts, having other type scripts to create the internet, which is not a technological difficulty at all. For example, the Amharic script. So what this essentially means is that if your email address, say for example mine, toko@mydomain.co.za, is written in Amharic, the same domain should pop up whether it's written in Latin script, in Japanese script. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about universal acceptance. It's a language modality. It's a technical modality that was just overlooked in the past 30 or 40 years or so in the disruption of the internet that we have today. So our goal with universal acceptance is basically to continue to build one internet and one online space where your online identity can actually finally be your real identity, irrespective of language. So what does this actually mean? We'll use Africa as a continental perspective. And for example, a craft maker in Jinja is going to write a Luganda web address, a Mikono, to attract local customers, right? Those same local customers traveling in from the Netherlands are going to look for African crafts in Jinja and be able to find him because they're using the same language modality, the same translation mechanisms and the same transmission transport mechanisms. So it's all written in the same language and it's universally accepted as a result. Whether it's a musician in Lagos or a tour guide who advertises tours across the Arabic domain, we also have a large emphasis on email address internationalization. So ensuring that irrespective of whatever URL or IP number, but that actual written email address should be translatable. So something simple like me writing my name in Zulu, because there isn't the right communication platforms to translate that, your message to me is going to be undelivered. So the system, if you write my name is Thokozile, you write my name into Google or into the AI, it's going to say thoroughly. My name is not thoroughly, so your message is never going to get to me. It's been corrected before the transcription happened. So what we want is we want tech people to update their websites and build tech that is universally acceptable, that accepts script across language barriers, and to ensure that all developers, all digital makers are also across their content platforms, making sure that these languages are, that their platforms, whatever is being built, is universally acceptable. So what we do, if a site rejects your name, speak up, tell the system that it's broken, close the message, and we're actually looking forward to an internet that speaks all of our languages. language is the primary barrier to internet accessibility at the moment. So our ability to close this through universal acceptance by championing one multilingual internet that accepts input in any language is extremely important, especially African languages. Yep, that's all from me.
All right, thank you so much, Toko. And the kind of work that we do, we can't do it alone. And it's quite a lot to do. So that's why we want to invite you to be a part of AFRALO. AFRALO, like I said, is the Africa Regional At-Large Organization under ICANN, and it represents the African voices in the ICANN meetings. ICANN has 3 meetings in a year. That's public forum, community forum, and annual general meeting. So if you scan the QR code, you'll be able to go to the page where you can be able to join AFRALO. On that page are other relos, that is for the different, other different continents. Thank you for listening in, and have a great afternoon.
Do we have questions for Mr. Mutegeki or Togozilwe, right? Is that the name? Just use the microphone on your desk.
My questions goes to Tokozile and the team. So you say that you are urging the tech company at least to come up with a tool which will at least allow other languages, like our local languages, that they can be accepted on the web or anything. Have you engaged any of them, or are you in touch with any of these technology companies that they can come up with ways in which they can incorporate this?
So for us as AFRALO, we're an advocacy space, and a lot of the work that we do is around policy and implementation. So we look at emerging disruptions and emerging technologies, emerging policy discussions, both technical policy and then also social policy. And so there is an engagement forum that is actively at the cusp of universal acceptance. So within the AFRALO workspace, you can also find the Universal Acceptance Working Group. You don't have to be a part of AFRALO. That is an international program. So Universal Acceptance has got a working group under ICANN as well, and various of them. But then I can say the efforts are being made from private sector as well. I know companies like NVIDIA are feeding in a lot of African languages into their LLMs. I know that, ICANN has got partnerships and relationships with companies like Google and some of the other private sectors. Not really naming them to promote them necessarily, but just saying that there are companies that are doing the work. On the ground, there are also a lot of organizations. We call them at-large supporting organizations, LSs. So there is opportunity. We also are open. Each year, there's a campaign that runs somewhere in the beginning of the year called Universal Acceptance Day. So I implore everyone to look out for that. There are grants that get given out to small grants to organizations and individuals to implement initiatives that promote universal acceptance. I think it's about like $2,000 or something. It's not a lot, but it's enough to get an initiative going. So with when you go on to the working group, which is the coalition, you'll also be able to find out more about the community and other initiatives that are happening.
Do we have any other question?
Yes. Okay, I'm interpreting for Master Hermenteiro as João. I think it's just an addition that
This forum should also take note while discussing or talking about African language or languages of the need to also include hearing impaired persons or the language that they use. When we develop apps, we should include video calling, a platform where they can use video calls mainly instead of just text. Because as a result of being deaf, the majority of deaf people have a certain level of language comprehension they might not be able to attain, especially in English or most spoken languages. So hence the need to have more platforms where they can connect using video calling, especially with other hearing impaired persons across the continent. Thank you.
We could have a response, or
as that was being shared, I was pondering and asking myself how inclusive the internet is, especially for the persons with disabilities. And I must say that is something that has caused me to ponder and see how, in as much as we are driving for universal acceptance, how do we accommodate for the persons with disabilities? Because in most cases, not much of the conversation is skewed in that direction. So I really appreciate that you shared that those comments, and take a note of that, and we do hope that in the next endeavors we are able to come up with solutions that are able to be that much inclusive. Thank you.
do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to have our next speaker.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I only have 15 minutes. My name is Silvia Kaarie. I come from an indigenous community called the Ogek, and we live in the Mau forest in Kenya. So I'm here representing the Ogek People's Development Program. That's an organization that's working for the Ogek and other indigenous communities in land and human rights advocacy. So I'm gonna, so we conducted a research to investigate the impact of online violence against indigenous human and environmental rights defenders. This was done in collaboration with APC, that's the Association for Progressive Communications. So the research was titled The Resistance and Resilience, and it was meant to bring together to collaboratively bring together the responses to and protect and documentation of the online violence against environmental defenders on the global south. So this research was conducted in Brazil, Mexico, Philippines, and Kenya. So for Kenya, we targeted 4 communities. That's the Ogiek, who live in the Mau forest, Sengwer, who live in the Embobut forest in the Elgeyo Marakwet County, Yaku, who live in the Mukogodo forest, and Endorois community, who live in the Lake Bogoria region. So why we targeted these 4 communities is that there has been a series of historical land injustices on these communities, and as a result of this, they've also faced evictions and displacements and lack of recognition. And as a result of this, these 4 communities have resulted to using the online space, the digital space, to advocate for their land and human rights. And being indigenous, of course, is a predisposing factor to them because they do not have the level of digital literacy that the other communities have and the rest of us have. And so we conducted the research using the two methods, that's the quantitative and qualitative, through conducting interviews at the community level, observations, FGDs during the community forums, and also we had to get a permit from NACOSTI, which is a body that would allow us to conduct our research at the community level in Kenya. So we managed to reach to about 265 environmental rights defenders from all the 4 communities. So in terms of gender distribution, we noticed that there are less women involved in the advocacy work as compared to the men, being at 35% and the men at 65%. So from the engagement with the community, we noticed that, okay, we found that this was mainly attributed to the traditional beliefs, that the cultural norms in the African system, that say that women were supposed to just sit and follow and let the men lead. There's also a level of low literacy levels amongst women in the community. And another factor is the multiple livelihood responsibilities. We all know what women do, right? In the African setup, they wake up, take care of the cows, look for the food, feed the babies and all. So that's one of the factors that was leading to the women being less in the advocacy space. In terms of age distribution, the youth took the largest percentage, the youth between 26 and 33, and also combining that 4 to 41, bringing together the 45% and 26%. That's a large number of youth being involved in the advocacy work at the community level. So there's also less involvement of the older human rights defenders, that's above the age of 50 years, that's only at 8%. So this means that the youth are starting to take over the advocacy work for the community because I believe they're the future generations, right? There's also access to, in terms of access to digital technologies, about 65% of the respondents have access to the smartphones, and only 16% have access to the feature phones. We call them kabambe in Kenya. That's 16% of them. And from the community engagement, these feature phones were mainly found with the older generations because they believe that it's easy to use and it's also not easily trackable, but I don't know, we all know that it's a digital tool, so they can trace you anywhere you want to, anywhere you are. In terms of also access to digital platforms, Facebook and WhatsApp, Facebook was at 27% and WhatsApp at 26%, that's close. So those are the 2 platforms that are majorly used by the defenders to advocate for their work. There's also 16% with Twitter, X now, and it shows the diverse use of these digital tools for the community, at the community level, for them to be able to raise their voice to the global population. In terms of the cyber aggression, and we're looking at the different forms of online violence against these indigenous environmental rights defenders. So hate speech was at 25%, sorry, and this was mainly aimed to silence or discredit their work. We're looking at also cyberbullying, that was reported at 20%, fake news or disinformation at 14%. In terms of impersonation, these were mostly seen from the social media pages, whereby someone uses the name of the defender that's known at the community to either solicit money or just post any random things, apart from what they're supposed to be posting about the community. So in contrast, we noticed that there is less direct cyber attacks, like the data breaches or the hacking at the community level, and also the doxing that was very low at only 5 and 6%. There were some cases of TFGBV, that's the technology facilitated gender-based violence, and the 2 cases we recorded were targeting the older women at just from 2 communities. We didn't have so much of them. Also looking at the perpetrators, as I had earlier said, these indigenous communities have faced land-related injustices from the government. And at first, during the data collection, we noticed that 40% of the defenders reported not knowing who were the perpetrators. But upon further investigation during the FGDs, since these communities have experienced evictions, displacements, and other land-related injustices, they mainly attribute the perpetrators to be related to the government. Some of them being paid actors, people with ill interest, and we're going to look at why in the next slide. And as you can see, these 4 communities are forest communities, so they'll mainly engage with the KFS, that's the Kenya Forest Service, and looking at why these communities are facing these attacks and why they've been evicted is because there are where they live in its own is a natural resource, the forest. So for community like Indorois, they have like minerals like rubies, the Lake Bogore in itself, and natural gas around the area where they live. And for forest communities like the Ogek Sangwer and Yaku, the forest in itself is a resource. And looking at also the 3rd reason is the non-implementation of the court cases. And I think so far we know that there have been cases won against the government of Kenya by the Ogek and Indorois, and they have not been implemented yet. So this is bringing divisions at the community and is also becoming a predisposing factor to the fact that there are people coming to the community and causing these divisions. Looking at the defenders' responses to these attacks, in terms of reporting, which was a very low, we had 60% who experienced different forms of online violence, pressing the report button on the platform, that's on Facebook or WhatsApp or any other platform that they're using, and 29% responded by blocking the perpetrators. Also, a significant number of them are admitted to not doing anything, just leaving it, we call it leaving it slide. And mostly this was, one of the reasons is because of the cultural beliefs. And the Africans believe that you do not have to revenge, you just let them die with their sin, okay? Looking at the impact also, 36% reported damaged reputation, 28% reported the psychological torture, which is on their mental health, and some of them felt exposed and vulnerable. And as a result of this, they lost motivation to work for the community, to continue advocating for the community and for the community, okay, for their land and human rights. And now to my call to action. This is I'm calling upon the technologists, civil societies, organizations, researchers to come together and join hands with us as we try to safeguard the rights of these indigenous communities. I believe that together we can create digital spaces that we can create a safe digital space for indigenous human rights defenders, for them to advocate for their issues safely. if you want to get in touch with us, I have our contacts here. That's our phone number, and you can check what we do at our website, and that's our office email. Thank you.
The speaker still has 3 minutes. We can fire her as many questions as possible.
Hi, can you hear me? Great. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very enlightening, also kind of like really understanding the experience of the intersection of environmental rights and human rights and how online violence removes people from actually trying to work for the community. So I wanted to find out, is there any legislation in Kenya that could be used or is being used to actually advocate for the protection of this group of people? Or is it that the government actually just is more interested in limiting their rights, so it can't be used to advocate for this? And then secondly, I think you touched on women not participating as much in the advocacy work. So I am curious, as you did your research, was it also connected to online violence? I know you talked about culture and social norms, and then did you also see that maybe with the younger people, were there also young women involved in that segment as well?
To answer the questions on the legislations in Kenya, I believe there are legislations to protect the indigenous, to protect defenders in Kenya, but so far we haven't seen them being really actualized and put in place to protect specific groups. However, there has been a unit for the marginalized and minorities and marginalized affairs unit, and it's currently working on a policy to protect indigenous, the minority and marginalized groups, including the indigenous communities at different levels. And also, in terms of the women, the older women were not really involved in the advocacy work, but looking at the younger generation, they were also not really involved because traditionally they were supposed to be working with the women doing the other things. However, they are coming up now after the research. We are doing capacity buildings for them, and so far so good. We can see some of them rising and coming up to these advocacy spaces.
Okay, I'm from Kenya. I'm from northern part of Kenya. So, do your research also targeting Somali community? If yes, you just mentioned about TFGBV cases, which were low number, like a small percent, and I'm coming from a community whereby women are not even elected on political seats. We have never get elected in political seats. And that comes with, online and offline harassment that plays a role. So, and again, talking to women, if one of the communities, a Somali community, I know we don't speak in front of men. And we don't even have conversation where men are. So, and you said more women didn't come out for the survey. So, what approach are you using to get these women in a different approach so that you can get also their voice? Because when we talk about indigenous community, always men are at the front. So what are some of the approaches are you using? Because at the end of the day, we need women's voices and women to lead at this digital world. Thank you.
Okay, the research did not cover up to the Somali community. We only worked with 4 indigenous communities. That's the Ogek, Sengwer, Yaku, and Endores. And maybe that's a call to action to expand our research and to other communities. In terms of how we are engaging women is that in the organization level, we have socioeconomic empowerment projects. So through these projects, we've enabled, we encourage women to form groups, come together to work together. So in the process, we are conducting capacity building trainings and encouraging women to come out and to speak about their issues because they're the voice of the community. So through the women groups, capacity buildings, that's how we are able to reach out to women at the communities.
We had 2 questions on my left-hand side. I saw a hand up there. Okay, we have a question behind.
Bonjour, tout le monde, parce que I speak by French. Moi, c'est Youssouf Alafouza du Tchad. J'aimerais poser la question à la dame du Kenyan. You need to translate it? Yes, right. Who is translated by English? You can't translate by English? Okay, no problem. I speak by French.
No, just hold on.
I come... Je m'appelle Youssouf, je suis venu du Tchad.
Excusez-moi, sorry, just hold on. Give then we can pick the translating kit.
Okay. Now is it ready?
Maybe I can take the next question as we wait. Is that okay?
No problem.
Okay, thank you. There's a lady. Yeah. Okay.
Can I speak? Hello? Can I? Okay. I'm interpreting for Master Samuel, the gentleman there. He's saying my comment is addressed to the lady who said something about our African cultures, or we believing that, or we being taught that if somebody makes a mistake or does something wrong, you should not respond, let them die with their sin. Now, he says that as much as God wants us to live in peace and not necessarily be attacking people, he also tells us to fight for each other. Because if we are quiet about wrong things happening in our society, they are going to continue in that way, and he will not be happy with us. So we have to speak out and advocate very loudly for those that are being abused or discriminated against.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. We've also been trying to encourage our defenders to speak out, to not let them die with their sins, speak out, because the reason why you're a defender in the first place is because you want your voice to be heard. So do not we encourage them to speak out and to let the issues be known to whoever has done them anything. In as much as it might be risky, but we really encourage them to speak out and do it carefully.
Okay, I'm interpreting again for Mr. Ricardo Julius. He's saying that the internet must also be made equal for both hearing and hearing impaired persons. Now, it's easy, or from where he's standing, it's easy for people who are not deaf to communicate, but faster, but it's a little harder for hearing impaired people to communicate. So when whatever apps are being created should make provision for hearing impaired persons, in the sense that instead of just having written text everywhere, there should be videos, short videos explaining those written text to those that may not be able to read what is written there. Okay, thank you.
Ok, merci beaucoup pour la parole accordée. Je m'appelle Youssouf Alafouza, je suis venu du Tchad. Je suis membre de House of Africa. Et j'aimerais poser la question à la dame du Kenya. C'est pas facile de lutter pour les communautés marginalisées. En fait, tout ce problème est lié au poids de la tradition, je pense. Et vous, en tant qu'organisation, quels sont les mécanismes que vous mettez en place pour convaincre les hommes ou bien de laisser les femmes, de donner la chance à ces femmes qui sont marginalisées et qui n'ont pas de voix devant eux, et enfin de trouver des solutions et que leur plaidoyer compte auprès des organisations. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, true. It's not easy for us to fight for the rights of marginalized communities, but traditionally, and also I think with the changing with the changing world, the men are now starting to appreciate that women also need to be given space. In as much as there's those traditions at the community, men are now starting to appreciate that women are also supposed to be given space to speak for the community, because after all, women are usually louder than men, and women are usually more heard than men. So the men at the community are now appreciating that, and they're giving spaces to women. Apart from that, during our capacity building sessions and also during the other meetings, we ensure that the participants, when we're doing the invitations, there's also the women and the men, and we make them balance so that you see, they can contribute equally.
Thank you very much. We have a final question here.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je suis Sanata Ouedraogo, je suis juriste, représentante de l'Association des femmes juristes du Burkina Faso. Donc, je viens du Burkina Faso. Je tiens à remercier les panélistes. Ma question s'adresse spécialement à la dame du Kenya. Alors, vous œuvrez en fait dans la défense des victimes, notamment les groupes marginalisés, les femmes spécialement. Nous faisons également cette prise en charge, cette approche vers les victimes. Mais la principale difficulté que nous rencontrons, c'est surtout la timidité de ces victimes-là. Comment vous arrivez à aller vers ces femmes tout en sachant que dans nos cultures, il y a ces stéréotypes qui sont là, il y a ces cultures qui sont là, des coutumes, des pratiques qui sont là, qui empêchent ces victimes même de s'exprimer. Comment vous arrivez à concilier cela pour avoir donc ces données? Et la deuxième question, c'était par rapport donc à l'implication également des hommes dans l'autonomisation des femmes, des victimes et surtout également des groupes marginalisés. Merci bien.
Thank you. Ayadala said that we reach out to women through the women groups. So we realized that when we have the women in groups, they are more accessible and more loud to the issues that are affecting them, more than when we try to reach out to them individually from wherever they are. So bringing them together in groups is one way that we have managed to reach out to women and to engage them through various means, either through advocacy or social economic empowerment or any other project that you want to engage with them. And I've also said that the men are starting to appreciate the fact that the women are there in the community. They're going nowhere. They're there and they now have a voice, and together they can advocate for the rights of these communities together as a community, not as men or women. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Let's get ready for our next speaker.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Mable Amuron, Mable Barbara Amuron, and I am a researcher from Uganda. I work with Threats, Threats Foundation, which is a pro-democracy civic tech research lab that is dedicated to combating digital threats against truth, democracy, and social unity. As you can see, that is some of our work. We do a lot of research. We also create a little bit of civic tech. We have something called Community Fakes Database. We have a website called Expose the AI. And we also have a gamification website called Spot the Fakes, where you play to see if you can spot AI, AI-generated images mostly. And with community fakes, we also work to share AI-generated AI-generated content. And also included on that slide is some of our research that we did, including how scammers targeted African journalists and the synthetic media that was in the digital space in Rwanda's 2024 election, as well as one of our biggest research projects, which is Israeli gas and Kenyan tears, about the finance bill and how non-lethal weapons were used during non-lethal weapons that were sourced from Israel were used during the finance bill protests. So today, I am going to be talking about, Invisible by Design. That is my presentation, and it is how AI detection gaps are in Africa, as well as the rise of solutionist AI within our African contexts. So AI artificial intelligence isn't science fiction anymore. It hasn't been for a while, although I think in the 2000s it was something that was a dream, but it's now here, and we are now using it every day. Since large language models burst onto the scene with ChatGPT, and from ChatGPT we went on to Perplexity, think Claude AI. Since that has burst onto the scene, AI is now shaping how we see, how we speak, how we participate, even how we participate in digital spaces every single day. From the algorithms that show us the videos that we see in our feeds, and to how the banks also approve, if the banks approve your loan applications, and whether a camera recognizes your face. AI is quietly making decisions about what we read, what we see when we scroll on social media, and even how we get seen on the internet. Unfortunately, the uncomfortable truth is African realities are often misread or completely ignored by these systems and these algorithms. Because it's not just a few missing languages, or maybe like a couple of biased algorithms. There is a much bigger flaw, because most of the data that is training AI comes from the global north, and those systems inherit those limits. Think, for example, a farmer in the US. His data has been used to train AI. And that data is also supposed to help a farmer deep in the village in northern Uganda. It doesn't necessarily work because the climates are different, the soil is different, and that's how we see that we are being excluded from the much larger conversation. So that brings me into what I like to call the detection gap. So the challenge isn't that Africa is overlooked in a few corners of the internet. It's that the very way these online platforms now police content makes the blind spots even more dangerous. What we've seen in the past few years has been a shift in content moderation from human moderators to AI moderators. Big social media platforms have quietly moved from these human moderators. And so instead of people who can understand the nuance and context We now rely on algorithms that are largely trained on Western data, Western languages, and Western cultural assumptions, Western context in general. And this creates a dangerous space, the detection gap really, between what AI thinks it understands and the complex realities of African life. African users are the ones that get hurt the most. For example, hate speech in Amharic or Yoruba or Swahili slips through unchecked most of the time. Legitimate political posts sometimes are flagged or removed, and facial recognition tools misread at a higher rate darker-skinned people. So when we look at, that is just the detection gap. One of the detection gaps that we are looking at is the language spot, the language blind spots, which is, thankfully, some of the people on the panel have been here and they've talked about how we need inclusion with the language. Now, Africa alone is home to over 1.5 billion people. And of that 1.5 billion people, 6.5 million are native English speakers. About 700 million speak English as a second language. But that is such a huge portion of the continent that faces barriers online. As an example, on Facebook, Facebook failed to detect hate speech in Amharic and Tigrinya during those periods of political unrest. In Kenya, just weeks before the 2022 elections, Facebook missed hateful political ads in Swahili, even in English, despite a well-known risk of election violence. In Nigeria, sometimes Twitter, now X, mislabels Nigerian pidgin as spam. Google Translate also struggles to translate Zulu or Xhosa into English. And then we have as well code mixed text, which is common in African digital communication, which is we tend to mix a lot of English with local languages. In Uganda, we have what we call Uglish, of course, the Nigerian pidgin. South Africa also has its own different dialects of English, and all of this is nuance that is not seen within AI or within the content moderation. So a few more numbers. About 0.02% of all the internet content is only 0.02% of internet content is available in African languages. Out of an estimated 2,000 African languages, fewer than 2% have a real online presence. And the problem is, if the data isn't there, then AI simply can't understand our context. So even AI, so as you can see, an example here is our Nigerian friends who sometimes get flagged. Their accounts are flagged just because they use Nigerian pidgin, and then when it comes to also AI writing detectors, sometimes they have tuned native English norms and often mislabel well-written English as AI generated. And we as Africans have unfortunately been taught to rigid standards how to speak English. And sometimes right now we are the ones who are being affected more than anyone when we are writing academic texts, and they're mostly being flagged as being written by AI, and that mostly is because we were trained by the AI was trained by Kenyans who speak a very good British English. Yes, so Some of the consequences that we see is that Facebook removed NSA's protest content, labeling it as false information. We've also seen how TikTok suppresses videos from Sudan protests, wrongly categorizing them as violent content, and yet all this information needs to go out there. AI can't simply contextualize African realities and activism. And this is information that came out during this particular FIFA about an audit of 10 banking algorithms in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa found there's a bias for women-owned SMEs, and there's also a problem of misread faces, up to 35% higher error rates of darker-skinned women in facial recognition AI. And this is also stressed back to the fact that the data sets were trained on lighter-skinned male faces, unfortunately. So the root causes, just like the old adage is garbage in, garbage out. It's data in, data out. What AI is trained on is what it gives. So if it's trained on by English and Western cultural contexts, then most AI companies and data centers are located in the global north. About 200 are located on the African continent, and 4,000 are located in the US alone. That is a very big disparity. So we need to have our data, and we need to train this AI on this data so that we can be included in these conversations. And we need to do it right as well. So some of the African solutionists, which is something that I'm happy to say that one of the panelists up here is Masakane. These are the people that are in the AI trying to make it even, in the AI space, trying to make it even more inclusive. So we have Masakane, we have Ville Square, and Swahili DAO. And also policy and governance is something that is very key in creating a space for AI to thrive. So the call to action, there are AI detection gaps in Africa. They reveal that there's a conscious effort to build, it's not AI. Artificial intelligence is not neutral. It reflects the data and the people who build it. AI fails African faces. It mislabels African dialects. It overlooks cultural nuance, not because the technology is weak, but because the interpreters are missing. AI doesn't just need data, it needs context, and Africa brings that context. If Africa remains invisible in those systems, the future of AI will be a future of exclusion. But if we invest in African languages, African data, and African innovators, we can build technology that truly serves everyone. The choice is ours, and honestly, I would rather we choose inclusion. Thank you. That is my email address if you would love to contact me to talk more about this.
Okay, thank you very much, Mable. The floor is open for questions. There's a question right behind you, Mable.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to add a little bit of information on that, especially when you look at African languages. So it's not just about looking at the languages as a whole. So for example, I speak Hausa, but there are several variants of Hausa. Most of what is even available online for some of the languages that are available is just one of the variants, meaning that for people that speak other variants of these languages, then they are not represented. Meaning that the work that we need to do is not just about, it's really a lot. The global north and the big tech that have been supporting this work would only do it towards the financial gain of what they can get. So for us now to look at the inclusivity side, for us to look at representation, for us to look at the preservation, then we really need to do it by ourselves. So we need to consistently push for these topics, and we need to actually own the data sets that have been created and the models that are going to come out so that they are representative, they represent the people, the language, and the culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
We have 2 questions, am I right?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Mable, so much. One of the things I have been very passionate about when it comes to digital inclusion is language and, cultural inclusion in AI and digital spaces and platforms. And I appreciate your mention towards how TFGBV has been accelerated, especially because of the lack of language models. But one of my issues would be, as he said, the work is a lot. Let's take Uganda, for example. We have about recognized tribes, about 50 or so. This means that the languages alone in Uganda could hit 60. Yes, and that's not even looking at the different dialects and the different, so when you consider that and the fact that, cultural contexts for 50 different cultures, yeah, well, we're talking about how to do this. We also have to look at the AI developers and, tech developers, and how will they be able to, incorporate all of this into, AI data sets and so on and so forth. So maybe you can expand a bit on that. And also, I'd like to say that at the end of the day, while we are, one of the things that I feel like we're going to benefit a lot from cultural context is, I think as Africans who have traveled a bit, you'll find that the African narrative in the Western world is quite absurd. We've met this a lot. And that absurdity is also leaking into AI and technology. I mean, we've traveled to countries and they're like, oh, you're from Africa, do you eat? Hello? Someone asked me if we have bicycles in Africa, but you understand. So this type of absurdity and context that they have about what Africa is and who the African people are, like even our culture is getting defined through European lenses and all that. So I feel that this is important because if we do not act quickly, we're going to have the same absurdity that we have in our physical, interpretation and also leaking into the digital space, because now even the small things that we want to achieve through technology and the benefits we want to accrue will be highly affected by this, interpretation, because this is what the data is going to, as you said, data in, data out. So if they think there's issues with African people, that is going to be reflected in the type of technology we receive. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We had a question.
Bonjour et merci aux différents
Just
panélistes.
hold on.
Yes. Bonjour et merci aux différents panélistes. Moi, c'est Omar Sougui, directeur technique de Chat Innovation Hub. Je viens du Tchad et nous accompagnons également les startups et nous travaillons également sur les technologies civiques. Pour revenir sur ces différentes interventions, premièrement, vous avez parlé que l'IA n'arrive pas vraiment à détecter certaines publications de certaines langues, mais au cours du mois dernier, on a vu avec la sortie de GPT-5 et d'autres technologies, il y a eu une amélioration incroyable, surtout sur compréhension du contexte et sur tout ce qui va avec. Et lorsque vous dites, par exemple, que l'Afrique doit s'adapter et contextualiser son histoire avec des technologies qui sont adaptées, ne dit-on pas qu'il faut aussi tenir compte de ces concurrents qui sont en face de nous, qui ont dépensé des milliards et des milliards pour produire ces technologies-là. Au lieu de commencer avec, ou bien de répartir des zéros, pourquoi pas aujourd'hui de juste collaborer avec eux et pour qu'ils puissent fournir leur technologie, mais adaptée à l'Afrique. Ça revient un peu moins cher et ça permet aussi aux politiques publiques et également à nos dirigeants de plus s'adapter, parce que si on va répartir des zéros et qu'on veut concurrencer avec ceux-là pour raconter notre propre histoire, ça va prendre du temps, alors qu'il y avance aussi rapidement que possible. Donc aujourd'hui, avec les agents IA, avec d'autres API, etc., on peut faire énormément de choses sans vraiment répartir des zéros. Et l'IA, parce que ça revient aussi aux formations. Aujourd'hui, si on maîtrise les prompt engineering, et d'autres méthodes pour savoir utiliser l'IA, même avec les technologies qui sont là, on peut tirer le maximum. C'est aussi une question de monter en compétence et sensibiliser les personnes à tirer le maximum d'IA avec ce qui est là, mais l'adapter en tenant compte des réalités qui sont les nôtres. Merci.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Omar. And yes, we have seen some, you are right, we have seen some improvement when it comes, when ChatGPT 5 came out, but it's still not enough. But that is just the LLMs, that's the large language models. However, we are talking about AI use in facial recognition. We are talking about AI use in our algorithms, how we scroll on social media, what we are allowed to see, and that is also all encompassing in AI. Large language models are improving daily. We thank them for that, but they are not big enough. I should say, because AI is now being adopted in every single place. Think about the medical space. Think about schools, and all of this needs to be worked on, because that's where, when the data gets in, then AI can create the solutions that we maybe need it to create. And another thing that you said was about collaborating with the AI companies. It's a good idea. It is, but we also have to take into consideration the fact that these are capitalists, and at the end of the day, what they want to do is to make money. What we are asking for is to the ability to tell our own stories. So why not put the money back in ourselves, in our innovators, and create solutions that feed our problems. I think one of the examples that I could give is the example of DeepSeek. ChatGPT was created with millions and millions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars, but DeepSeek, created by the Chinese, was something that was created with half a fraction of that amount. So who's to say we can't also create something with half the fraction of what was created with DeepSeek? So that is something that we also need to talk. We need to challenge ourselves to create solutions for ourselves as opposed to looking to the West. Yeah. Yes, the first question. Sorry. Yes, I feel like that also, a little bit of what I said building, and I know we've had this, we've said this over and over again through the course of this, this conference. We need to build capacity within our own selves. We need to let people know that all of this is possible. We can be AI developers. It just needs something to click in our minds, and it needs us to just go out into these communities and build capacity of these communities, because within those communities there are solutions. So yes, there are over 2,000 languages on the continent, over 2,000, and in those 2,000 languages there are also different dialects. For example, I am an Itesot, and from northeast Uganda, we have 3 different dialects. There's one that is from Tororo, there's one from Soroti, and then there's also the Kenyan dialect as well for the Kenyan Itesots. So all of that is nuance that needs to be reflected in the data that we train AI in. We train AI in, and it's possible. It seems like it's such a massive undertaking, but it's something that is possible, and it's something that we could do if we really, really, really put our mind to it.
We have a question on the left.
All right. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much to all of you inviting us to this internet forum. So, my name is Toini Nekundi, and I am part of the deaf community here in Namibia. I would just like to ask a question from the lady. I think it's the one from Uganda. I have a question for you, ma'am. I just want to know, from your country, how do you use the internet and assist other communities who lack thereof, especially when it comes to information dissemination? And who assists the organizations? Is it from the government, especially during data collection? Is it from the government, or have you created different partnerships with other organizations or various private groups? And then for your organization, to be a board member, how does one become a board member? Do you, from all countries of Africa, is it possible to be a board member? And what are the fees included therein? Because we don't just want to have people from Uganda participating in this very important work that you do, but I'd like us, all of Africa, to include and partner up for the greater good in this. Since you have the experience of your country, kindly share. Thank you.
So I think the first question was, how do you use the internet? Well, the internet is, I would say, mostly for, or the most people that use the internet are people within the central region, which is where the capital city is. The numbers are about 13.3 million internet users in Uganda. That is the numbers as of January 2024. And the penetration rate of the internet in Uganda is at just 27%. So it's still a problem. We need to make the internet even more available to the indigenous communities, as well as the people with disabilities, as well as people that have not learned how to use the internet yet. And most people will go within the country, most people will go to the internet just to go to social media, which is, I think, TikTok right now, because Facebook is still blocked in the country, but before TikTok, it was Facebook. And for us, that is the internet, that is the entirety of the internet. Who assists the government in maybe the telecoms? I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. And for our organization is based in Uganda, but our work we work across the global south, and we deal with digital threats, like I said during the presentation, and how to get on the board. I guess we'll have to talk to my boss about that. However, our organization is spread across 3 different continents, I believe. We have presence in the US, we have presence in Europe, as well as on the African continent, in Uganda and Kenya as well. So I would love to have a conversation with you after this, just to, yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It's time for our next speaker. As our speaker makes way to the podium, I would like all of us to take advantage of the WOVA platform. Someone talked about African absurdities. If you could also share some of the absurdities you have experienced as an African who is traveling, that would be great. We all remember how President Donald Trump spoke to the president of Gambia, I think, in the most condescending way ever. Yeah, we can share those absurdities. I think we'll get to learn from that. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sani Suleiman, and I work for Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African organization working to promote digital inclusion and digital rights across the continent and the global south at large. So this lightning talk is me sharing with you some of the preliminary findings of our ongoing research on digital inclusion assessment in the continent. We are attempting to paint a picture of the state of digital inclusion in some African countries, as well as, also to some extent, measure the interconnectedness between, support from the government and also support from the non-governmental partners in these countries. So that's my name, and I'm a programs officer leading the research work of Paradigm Initiative. Okay, let me start with painting some pictures from the data that it's quite available to everyone on the internet. First, there is a visible digital divide in the continent, which remains a critical challenge to the inclusive development. Aside infrastructure, which from the research we have seen, most of the governments are focusing on, digital inclusion also speaks to affordability, speaks to access, speaks to skills, and also the content, which has been talked about by the previous speakers. By 2050, the population of the African youths will double or almost double, which, as we know, that generation is the one usually using the internet. So we have a persistent, the first one is the persistent digital divide in the continent, and as well as a projected growth that is quite alarming compared to how things are going. Although 3% of the world's population, according to 2023 research, it's connected, the least developed countries, which are mostly in Africa and Asia, only count 27% of the population internet users population. African countries remain the least integrated into the digital economy worldwide, despite measurable improvement. So this is me trying to, refresh our memories in how the, the continent is faring when it comes to digital inclusion. So like I said, we conducted a research called Assessment of Digital Inclusion in some African countries, and those countries are Ethiopia, DRC, Namibia, Cote d'Ivoire, Algeria, and Mozambique. So this is not a random selection. We use some criteria to choose these countries. First is the geographic diversity. If you look at it, of course, we attempted to cover the whole continent so that at least to have, to some extent, unbiased sample from the continent. Also, we use the GSMA connectivity index ranking so that we will have different countries at a different digital maturity level, so that the comparison will be fair. And of course, the availability of the universal access funds, because this research speaks to access, speaks to connectivity as well. So and also transparency. So we are trying to see how these countries are utilizing the universal service funds in their various countries. The approach is desktop reviews. We try to look at the country's ICT policies. We try to look at youth strategies, universal service funds, regulations and laws, budgets from the countries through between 2020 to 2025. Also, we conducted key informant interviews with the government officials, CSOs working around digital inclusion, private sector, including the internet service providers, and some donors. And we did some mapping of non-state initiatives, NGOs initiatives, private sector initiatives, and some of the donor projects. However, one of the limitations is that we couldn't conduct interview in Algeria and DRC. For Algeria, it's quite a tight place, like some of you might know. So it was very difficult to get to speak to government officials in that country. And for similarly with the DRC and also time as well. So we had to rely on a secondary data. Of course, another limitation is this is not a reflection or accurate reflection of what is happening in the continent in its entirety, because we are just researching 6 countries. This is the analytical framework that we use. We look at national commitments, external ecosystem support, and also the enabling environment. On that, the national commitment, of course, their budgets, their national strategies, digital transformation strategies, and so on and so forth. For the ecosystem support, we look at what the private sectors are doing, like their CSR, what NGOs are doing, maybe trainings, working on connectivity, and so on and so forth. And of course, innovation hubs and other non-state actors. For the enabling environment, we look at the funding mechanism, infrastructure that speaks to broadband connectivity, affordability of devices, availability of devices as well, and other digital tools to facilitate scale. So these are some of the key findings. Most of them do have strong strategies and also a rising budget. For example, Ethiopia has one of the most wonderful strategies on paper, and also their budget has been increasingly, increasing throughout the years. We are going to see some charts in the next slides, but also we have seen that there is a lot of, or rather a visible indication of donor dependency. A country will initiate a digital inclusion initiative, and then they will get some donations or grants, and after that it will stop. There is no sustainability plan after the donation or grant periods ends. And there is also a fragmented effort. The NGOs are doing their own thing. The government is doing its own thing, and so on and so forth. Transparency issues in all of the countries, you can't find a reliable data that speaks to how the universal service funds are being utilized to close the connectivity and infrastructure gap in the countries. Affordability crisis as well, data cost up to 8% of monthly income, way below the UN target of 2% of monthly income in the countries. And of course, devices are very costly across the continent. Connectivity lag, urban and rural issues, urban 4G, strong 4G connection, rural areas, last mile, and affordable solutions. Also, most of our innovation hubs are concentrated in the cities, leaving the rural areas unattended. So across the continent, this is usually how the funding goes. Usually the source of funding, it's public budgets. Some governments are budgeting some amounts to the issues of digital inclusion. Then you have donors and international financial institutions as well. You have internet service providers and telcos that are doing some CSR, and of course the private capital through public-private partnerships. Those funds are being used across the continent for the universal service funds, blended financing, where the private sector, it's encouraged to leverage on some philanthropic funds available to carry out some activities towards that. Grants and innovation funds and PPP contracts. Some of the outcomes is rural coverage, digital public infrastructure, skills and startups, and affordable access. So this chart paints the budgets of these countries between 2020 to 2020. However, this, as it is, might not paint the accurate picture. You need to take context into consideration. Take, for example, Ethiopia, which is up there. It has, the largest amount when it comes to budgeting compared to the countries like Namibia. However, Ethiopia, it's has over 100 million people when it comes to population, while Namibia, it's a couple of millions, around 3 million or so. So you can't compare, and also they are at different level when it comes to GDP as well. So if you convert this into percentage against the national budget, you will see that all of them are not doing so great when it comes to how much is being budgeted for digital inclusion activities. And also we try to, this looks a bit technical, but yes, we try to look at how private sector are contributing to the issue of digital inclusion in the continent, or rather in these 6 countries. So this is like intensity in terms of where are they focusing on in these countries. If you take, for example, the last one here, which is DRC, you have green, which is between 3.5 to 4.5 in terms of intensity. Most of the private sector are focusing on digital skills around that. Infrastructure, it's about 5%, so that means the money that goes into DRC mostly goes into infrastructure. innovation and financial inclusion. If you take Mozambique, 2.0 to 2.5, which is that purple. I'm not so great with colors, but I believe that's purple, which is quite low in terms of innovation. There is no innovation in their approach. There is also, limited attention given to financial inclusion. Similarly, Ethiopia, they are focusing a lot on digital skills and financial inclusion. In terms of infrastructure and innovation, they are somewhere in the middle between 4.5 to 3.5, something like that. Thank you so very much for listening. And like I said, I work for Paradigm Initiative. If you want to get in touch for general inquiry, hello@Paradigm. If you want to speak to us around programs, programs at paradigmhq.org. And this is my personal email as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Suleiman. The floor is open for questions. Please use the mic on your table.
Thank you. I realized I forgot to introduce myself the last time. Hi, I am Yasmin Ahmed, and I'm co-founder for Femtech Law Initiative in Uganda, and I'm currently working as the director of programs. So I like the conversation and inclusion, especially across the research you've done across different African countries. And thank you for explaining that there's different contexts, especially when doing research. My question is specific to digital inclusion of persons with disabilities, okay, especially when it comes to access to online platforms and how they are able to use this. I would like you to explain to us if you looked at access for them, things like is the web accessibility guidelines, are they really looked at? Have any of the service providers really considered the web accessibility guidelines? Things like even tech companies, or in your research, how have persons with disabilities been able to access online platforms and digital services, and things like speech to text and so on and so forth. And something along those lines. Can you please elaborate for me if any of that was looked at? Because I'm starting to understand, especially like in the Ugandan context, persons with disabilities are not a priority as a minority group, and that is very dangerous because they're being left behind in a lot of this, whether it is government websites, whether it's government services. So how are they supposed to access a lot of these things if they're not included? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that questions. And I don't know, without preempting our effort, this is something that we are planning to look at in 2026. But for this research, it does not specifically look at, access to, for persons with disabilities, for example. However, among the data we collected, we have seen efforts from some of the, civil society organizations, especially that are doing, some trainings, usually trainings, actually. We couldn't find anything else. Also because we are not looking at that, I must say. So some trainings that is focusing on specifically persons with disabilities. But I will say I couldn't find, or rather the data we have, I couldn't see like a specific attention given to persons with disabilities on that, from the budget, from the donors as well that are coming to the continent and give the money for. So it's usually included under the digital skills issue. It's just a digital skills issue and all of that. But I must say that there is no specific attention given to the issue of persons with disabilities. And it's something that we truly need to look at, because when we talk about digital inclusion, mostly we talk about digital skills, and even at that digital skills, we are marginalizing other people from it, which is persons with disabilities. But yeah, in our 2026 plan, it's one of the research that we are planning to do, specifically focusing on persons with disabilities, and of course we can discuss how we can partner on that, because it's also going to be well, it's going to be focusing on the global south, not only in Africa and some countries in Asia and also South America.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are way out of time. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our panelists for sharing their knowledge. We don't take it for granted. I'd like to thank our participants too for actively participating in the session. I would also like to have a special thanks to our interpreters. Are you also translators? They're also interpreters. Thank you so much. Yes, the media team, everything is very flawless and crystal clear, being broadcast in 4K. Thank you very much. I think it's time for lunch.